Good evening, everyone. So glad to meet you all online. I'm today's speaker, Li Lu, and you can call me Maria. I'm a content strategy working at AliExpress, and now I'm truly happy to be here to do my very first talk about content design. So thank you, Anna, for inviting me and encouraging me to share my cases, my experiences with you all online today. And yes, let's just, before we kick off, I will just give a little bit introduction about myself and what I've been doing here in the content design industry. So now I have been working at AliExpress content team for 2 years since graduation, and I am mainly in charge of user growth, including user touch channels, including push notifications, promotional emails, system emails, and WhatsApp channels, and uh, also some like user researches about businesses and also about Europe local markets. Of course, in my daily work, AIGC is a significant part in all the business domains I mentioned above. And speaking of the AI generated content, AliExpress actually should be one of the very first companies that invested in the implementation of AI content in our daily businesses. And luckily, I have been included in this project since the very beginning when everything hasn't been built up. So since early last year, we have been exploring several domains to incorporate AIGC content and now still trying out and expanding our scope of using AI in our daily work. So actually, over recent years, we have been witnessed the ongoing debates about the dilemmas regarding AIGC. This topic is just everywhere in all the conferences, forums, talks, workshops. AI is just the can't miss topic. But even with that many talks, I still feel like there's something missing and there's something that hasn't been fully discussed. So today I will just elaborate my talk based on 3 key areas. We will first talk about AIGC's role in extending human capabilities and its complex relations with our human content designers. And then we will cover the topic of the AIGC in multilingual context, including its implementation and significance in the integration with business goals. And in the last part, I will share with you some practices and examples in our actual daily work. All right. So the first thing I want to address is this common misconception. AIGC isn't about replacing human writers. From my perspective, its true value lies in its ability to scale and personalize content creation, to do tasks that human writers struggle to achieve efficiently. Many of you must be using AI in your daily work or life. So could you please just type in the chats and share with other people in the meeting room, what tasks do you do usually with AI for better efficiency, or more specifically with generative AI, because there are many types of AI, as you know. So as we mentioned above, we will just use AI to scale our work and to do even more personalized work. And speaking of efficiency, copywriting, correct. That's a very common use. And speaking of efficiency, what we always have in mind is that AI is taking up our space and kind of invading in the scope that we used to own to have. And some leaders or managers also believe that AI would save quite a lot of hiring expenses for them. On the left, you can see that how AIGC can potentially encompass all aspects of human content creation. But is it the truth? Is it the way how we expect to apply AI? Actually, we can tell a whole different story. On the right, I replaced the word human with manual. And we can see that AIGC and manual work actually overlap, indicating collaboration. So personally, and based on my experiences working with AI, this is closer to the current reality. On one hand, as content designers, we process a lot of tasks every day. We do a lot of things every day. And we write UX content for products, for features, and we write some promotional emails for upcoming sales and other things. And some of the tasks are basic, repetitive, and there's already a guideline to follow. But some tasks are more innovative, strategic, and require more business background or business insights to plan. We always treat these two types of work in our daily life differently. And I think with AI, with its participation, actually we should keep acting in this way. Because AIGC enables humans to focus more on unique tasks with strategies, while AI can automatically handle repetitive or large-scale challenges. And we could also use AI to brainstorm some new ideas for a project or to write specific copies with its help. So from my perspective, it's never a choice of black or white. It's more of a graduated color from white to black. Yeah, as we discussed, we can break our daily work into different types. For example, we have strategic work, we have repetitive tasks, we have some requests for just one time, and we have like daily, weekly, monthly requests. And we also have some work that can be standardized, but we also face some requests that need highly personalized content. So let's just take personalization at scale as an example. Imagine generating customized content push notifications for thousands of users or even tens of thousands of users. And they all have different preferences on products, on categories, or more other factors. Because of the resource limitations, it's basically impossible for human writers to deal with this kind of task on a daily basis, not to mention when it comes to other languages other than English. So without AI, will be just a request that we all know that it fits and it really fits the business needs, but it's just still out of our consideration just due to the resource limitations. But now with the help of large language models and prompt engineering, our content designers, we can actually contribute more, not less, to the business. We can just delegate repetitive, periodic, and to personalize requests to AI. And then we will just prioritize the value of content work by focusing on impactful and strategic initiatives. So in an ideal collaboration model, once we establish a new content strategy and demonstrate its success, its performance through pilot experiments, A/B testing, or any other methods, we can move on to the next step to streamline the content production process with AI and then fully unlock the potential of our content work. But as I said, that's a very ideal model. And in real life, while AIGC is good at scaling and personalization, as we mentioned, many applications are limited by language. So in the next part, in the second part, we will just turn to the challenges and opportunities of implementing multilingual AIGC in real business. So here's something important. Most AI applications are heavily English-centric, but in diverse business contexts, this is simply not enough. If we look at the performance of the available large language models, it's very clear to anyone who works with AI or who uses AI. We can see that most of them perform much better in English than in other languages. And among all these potential reasons, there are two factors that we cannot just ignore. So the first one is that it is estimated that more than 90% of the training data is in English. So English is an extremely highly resourced language in the AI industry. So we can say English is privileged in this aspect. But this data is based on the model GPT-3. And actually the detailed breakdown of languages and their respective proportions in the training data for models like GPT 3.5 and 4.0 is still undisclosed by OpenAI or other providers. But we can actually safely assume that the situation won't change much in these two latest models. And second, most of the internet users are actually English speaking. They are not necessarily English native speakers, but they use English while they browse websites or they interact on the internet. And we can see that more than half of the web content is produced in English. So English stands as the most widely utilized language on the internet. And it unquestionably serves as the lingua franca within the field of like computer science or scientific communities across the globe. But this fact just reinforces this, let's say, massive effect on this aspect. And the current models will only amplify the English bias further, because when users interact with these models, they use English because English performs better. And then these models have more and more training data based on English. So this bias is just getting further and further. And that explains why English is privileged in the generative AI application. Many talks or articles only focus on the use cases of large language models in English, but when you apply those in your daily businesses, you will quickly find out that there's a huge gap between the expected performance and the actual result you get. Part of that is because the fabulous showcases or the inspiring ideas are mainly based on English. But actually, this just does not necessarily fit our actual business needs. Just take AliExpress as an example. Currently, we support 16 languages. So when we produce any content, either for US copies or for promotional banners, we will need to treat all the languages equally. Although English is still our source language, but no language will be considered unimportant or unnecessary in this process, because we would like to guarantee a quality experience for all the shoppers across the globe. So in this context, English isn't the only language needed for an AIGC limited to English or only proficient in this language is just incomplete for our businesses. And it is also now increasingly being understood that achieving the same level of quality and performance for other languages, even those that very widely spoken like Spanish, Korean, Portuguese, French, that's not an easy task. So what did we do in AliExpress to guarantee the performance of the key languages, at least at the basic level? To implement multilingual AIGC, we always start from defining our business goals and breaking down content standards for each language. Generative AI is a powerful tool for many different content-related tasks, but for businesses, more specifically for user growth, let's say, we need to carefully pick the right battleground so that we can boost the efficiency and gain more measurable results. As we discussed, large language models significantly expand our content creation capabilities, especially for personalization and scale. But where do we actually use this power? Where should we invest our resources? Based on my experiences, we should just think big and go for the projects that need a lot of content. AI shines when it's working on a large scale, and we've seen that AI content often performs less well on smaller and high quality tasks, or we just find it not that cost effective using AI on the tasks in which a lot of business background is a must. But for large volume projects where a good enough content is acceptable, the business return is huge. For example, between these two projects I listed here, based on my experiences, I would choose the second one to write 500 emails using AI instead of writing a CTA with AI. Because the resources that we invest into the training and the effort, the operation team and the tech team input into this project is huge. So we won't get the most of the AI content. That's why we always pick project like the second one. After we determine in which project we'd like to apply AI, and now it's time to move on to the next step to establish content standards for AIGC. And very important, in multi-languages. From my perspective, this could be the most essential part in the entire process. The standards serve as the basis of your prompt and also kind of source of truth in the review and iteration step. We can simply condense the step into 3 questions. By answering them, you are mostly ready for your content standard. The first one will be, how should the content look like? It can be tightly related to your content guidelines or style guides that you already have, including capitalizations, voice and tones, and many other standards. The second question will be, what mistakes are unacceptable, especially under multilingual context? In the AI-generated content, there could be a lot of errors of different types. For example, there could be an untranslated English word in the Italian copy, or there's a missing space between the question mark and the text in French, or there are some forbidden words in different languages. Although they are all errors, let's say, we need to determine which are unacceptable and which are forgivable. So I usually list all these possible potential error types here and discuss with the operation team, with our content colleagues, which are the critical ones and which are the minor ones, which we can forgive and which we cannot accept. For example, I would have a document like this to list the error type and the real examples I take from our output data. So this is actually very useful for our annotators, for our reviewers, and sometimes also for the tech team, so that they can have a basic understanding of what this error type is. Because most of your collaborators, most of your stakeholders, they may have no basic understanding, no knowledge about multi-languages. So this style guide or this error guide will be very useful for them. Yeah. I feel like there's a missing slide, but it's okay because due to the time limitations, I will just cover several steps of the whole process. Because if we go back to to this slide, we can see that there are still a lot of different steps before you can get the actual AI content. But if you have already done your preparation work correctly and thoroughly, then the latter part will be much easier. For example, you will expect a lot of back and forth, a lot of iterations between the prompt generation, the prompt creation, and the output review. Maybe this step will just take you months. But eventually, with all the standards we have, with all the professional annotators we have, and with all the effort your stakeholders put into this project, you will eventually get AIGC content after standard and available for this project, available to get some business results. Yeah. So we will have this last question here. Following all the steps we discussed, we should start to think about what level of risk are we willing to accept. Because let's be realistic, perfect content is a myth. Even with the power of AIGC, to move forward effectively, we need to agree on an acceptable level of risk. This means finding a balance between maximizing business results and managing potential content issues. This is where collaboration becomes key. Because as content designers, we naturally will focus on ensuring content quality, and we want to have a positive user experience for all of our users. For the business team, they will more focus on, or they will prioritize the performance data. So through open discussions back and forth, we can establish a clear threshold. We can set our expectations. For example, for promotional push notifications that we are sending to our users every day, we could agree that if 80% of the sample content meets the quality standard, we are ready to proceed to A/B testing. That could be our compromise, and that could be our agreement. Yeah. And during this process and within multiple AIGC projects, we did get some interesting findings that I'd like to share with you today here. The first thing we found out is that by tailoring the prompts for different languages and specifying some language-specific rules, we can observe an increase in the content quality. So sometimes we assume that the large language models, they should be aware of all these basic language rules. So when we ask it to generate content in the required language, it won't make mistake on the basic language rules. But actually, this is not the truth. There will be always some blind spots for AI, especially in non-English content. Therefore, even if we are asking AI to do the same task, I just recommend you to add necessary tips for different languages. For example, here in this case, I'm just writing these 2 tips in the prompt to ask AI to ask the model to follow the basic rules in Spanish. And by adding that, we can see that actually we can just make sure that 90% of the errors won't appear in the next round of the net output. And the other thing is that we can tell large language model perform much better with English prompts. And ideally, we should prompt it to generate output in just one language at a time to get the best results. In AliExpress, we did an experiment with Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, and French. Based on the evaluation of our professional reviewers, the language quality is much better using the second method in the prompt. And this approach implies much more costs in the tokens, and also it's more time consuming from the tech team side. But actually, within the above, with all these methods we mentioned and with some other minor adjustments, in the content review process, the language quality in multi-languages improved by 60%. So this is actually a huge improvement and accelerates the implementation of AIGC in our actual businesses. That's why eventually the tech team, the operation team, and our content team, we are both agreed. We are both happy with that. So after all this preparation work, next we create tailored prompts for different languages, and we feed the models with human written examples. But evaluating the output based on the established standards allows us to refine our prompts and optimize the model. And with several rounds of iterations, we will eventually get the AI-generated content of quality. And then we may build an automatic system with a tech team that allows us to produce this type of content without much manual interventions. But as we know, setting content standards or getting quality improvements are not equal to measurable results. So in the last part of the talk, let's just discuss some real examples of how we use AIGC to actually empower the business. As an online shopping platform, AliExpress is sending promotional push notifications every day to our users. These pushes were generally related to a sale, a discount coupon, new arrivals in general, bestsellers of the week, etc., etc. But they won't be too specific because we cannot invest so much time or human resources on writing these copies. How many creative and different pushes a human writer can produce every day? 50, 100, 200, apart from all the other work he or she needs to do. But what if we can produce a promotional push very, very specific for each single product we are selling on the platform, and we can update these pushes monthly and send them to the target users that will be interested in these items. We are talking about millions of items, so this is obviously out of humans' capabilities. But with AI, with large language models, this is possible, and this is what we are doing here in AliExpress. And we can even diversify it further. For the same product, we can describe or we can promote it from various directions. For example, we can describe it from the cost-effective perspective, or we can focus on the positive reviews, or we can say it's best-selling this week, or we can say it's just the latest new arrivals. All is visible and profitable. With this AIGC pushes, we are getting more than 30,000 extra DAU to the platform, and that's actually a huge growth just for the push notifications channel. So this is the first case study that I'd like to share with you. And we can also apply AI in other areas. On AliExpress, most product titles are uploaded and provided by the sellers. Therefore, there are inevitably some not so great item titles on the platform. And the data shows that these item titles usually perform worse than the well-written ones because they are badly translated or they are too short without the keywords users want, etc. Based on that, we tried to optimize them with AI, and we used the original titles and other specification information of the products as input. Then we note an obvious increase in the average exposure of these items, and consequently, they drive much more sales than before. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I'd like to share today. And on this slide, I'm doing a little bit of recap of the topic that we covered today. So first, we discussed a little bit about the relations between AI and content designers. From my perspective, AI's true value lies in its ability to scale and personalize, rather than replacing human beings. And then we talked about the generative AI in multi-languages, because we know currently English dominates the AI industry, so it's the most powerful language in AI. But actually, multilingual proficiency is crucial for good real-world business applications. And we also look at some key steps to implement large language models in multilingual context. And then I just share 2 tips from my side. For example, we can tailor the prompt to each target language for optimal output quality, or we can use English prompts whenever possible to avoid mixed language prompts to have a better quality of the output data. And then I shared 2 cases that we are using AI to empower our business in AliExpress. The first is about the promotional push notifications. We are diversifying them using AIGC. And in the second case, we are using AI to optimize seller-provided product titles and to maximize its exposure. So that's pretty much what we've discussed today. And yep, let's just wrap up here. Thank you very much for listening. And I'm open to any questions, feedback, comments, everything. Thank you.
Whoa, thank you so much, Maria. I think it was very, very comprehensive and a great overview of the work you've been doing for the last year. You do have a lot of questions and they keep coming. So I guess
Good.
we start first with questions coming from Etienne. Etienne, if you prefer, you can like speak them out loud, or otherwise I can just read it for you.
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry my camera was off today because my environment is not really pleasant at the moment. I
No
have
worries.
a few questions. The first one is like, you mentioned GDP in your presentation. I wonder, is GPT like which GPT model you use or use other models? The second question is like, we sort of doing the similar experimentation on our team as well, but we're sort of keep testing and then keep struggling about the quality output, but don't know or not sure yet, like when we can officially launch, because we're also concerned about the quality. The use cases were the sort of like the type of content we're doing is for the long form help article, or like also like the push content as well. So I wonder, when you are making the decision about officially launch the Gen AI workflow, and then would you set a quality threshold in terms of numeric scores, whether from the machine, like the COMET score, or like the traditional MQM framework, to help you guide decisions on which language can use generated or translated content by LLM? The third question is, when applying Gen AI to multilingual content on your team, there are two options in terms of improving the quality. One is from focusing on the model training through the engineering approach. Another is refining prompts. I wonder if you use either of those, or you prefer to use both.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for the questions. These are really great questions, because these are the challenges that we actually face during the collaboration with the project team. And regarding your first question about the model that we are using, so at the beginning, we are using OpenAI's model, and we are using some samples from that. But basically, right now on here, we are training our own model. Yeah, that's the question. Okay. That's the answer. And for the second, and for the second question, how to improve the output quality, and do we set any quality standard? The answer is yes, just as I mentioned in the talk. And there will be a lot of different types of errors. So after observing that, we actually sit with the operation team, and we just list all these error types to them with real examples, and sometimes with Chinese translations, to tell them what's going on here, why this is incorrect, and how bad is this error. And then together we define the error severity, let's say, like how bad is this error. For example, if there's an untranslated word in a French push notification, it's still in English, and most part of it is in French, so it's a mixed language, then I will say it's critical issue. It's not allowed, it's unacceptable. But for example, if there's a missing space in the between the question mark and the text, or between the text and the emoji, I won't say it's a critical issue. It could be an error. It could be improved, but it won't just be too serious for us. So in this way, we just list all these severities of the error types, and we align that. For example, for push notifications, since it's mainly for promotional, so we can accept there are some minor errors in that. For example, for push, we set 80% as a pass rate. If 80% of the sample output is okay, then it can go into the A/B testing stage. And in the A/B testing, in the A/B experiments, we will observe the data, and also we observe the complaints from the users. If a lot of users complain about the quality, okay, then stop. Even if we have a good result from the business side, we need to stop, or we need to optimize. But if there are not many complaints and we observe a positive data, then yeah, we will proceed and eventually launch it online officially. Yeah. And regarding the third question about the method, like how do we optimize the content quality? Yeah, there are basically two methods. We either iterating the model, so the job will be in the algorithm team, let's say, or we just refine the prompt. It's mainly for our content team. And first of all, we are using both of them. And I will say the easiest way is refining the prompts.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. because it
Yeah.
means less resource inputs, and actually it's more efficient sometimes.
Right. I think like your team is very smart in terms of like doing both options, because I have some struggle with refining the prompt. It's about the model just doesn't learn about some rules you put in the prompt, so it's the same issues keep happening. And then, but if you really continuously iterate on the model training data, that's gonna be helpful to in terms of getting the consistent or like more correct output over time. So, sorry, I have a follow-up question regarding when you say 80% pass rate for the push. With pass, is it like free of errors, or it?
I would say at the beginning or at the very beginning of a project, I would say pass means there are no critical issues.
I see.
But there
Got
might
it.
be some minor issues.
Yeah. We use also this. It's like before GPT, when we're trying out sort of like the neural machine translation, and then by what we define pass, it's also like we allow 2 minor errors. It's not like it's free of errors at all.
Yeah.
So thank you for answering those questions, and then really enjoy your sharing. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
All right. Our next question is coming from Jared. Jared, would you please jump in and tell us a little bit more about your question?
Yeah, I'll share my screen even, but you might have to forgive me. My cat is literally on the table beside me making a bunch of noise, so he might cross through in front of the camera. Good, he jumped away.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, no, great to hear you sharing again, Maria, and great to see kind of the fruits of all that labor that you were kicking off right when I was leaving the company. So my main questions are just basically I wanted to go back over some of the specifics from that slide that you talked about. That was a 60% improvement. If you could give some more kind of case examples or talk a little bit more about what those improvements looked like. Like, I know it's like error correction is a big part of it, but just maybe expand on that a little bit, because it's very fascinating to me, and especially because I talked with you about those issues as they were overcome. So I'd like to see how the final result came out a bit, and more importantly about prompting in their own languages. What elements of prompting in their own languages are really influential, right? Because that's something for multi-language translation that could be very helpful, right? Especially if you're working with translators not in your team and you have to outsource, having them work on maybe strategy for developing the prompts and things could be a good way for people to leverage international content without needing to have as many translating resources as Alibaba does.
Okay, yeah. And regarding the 60% of the metric, actually we are also using the pass rate. When I say like the language quality improves by 60%, I mean that the pass rate increased by 60%. So it means that in the output, we observed less errors. And within all the like reduced errors, let's say that most of them are literal translations or mistranslations and untranslated words. Because when you when you condense or when you compile a lot of languages in one prompt, for example, generate like 10 pushes in the following 16 languages, then we will see that actually the translations are follow the English structure. So it's not generating, it's translating the English. We will say the large language models, they are also lazy. So they do literal translation from English instead of creating. So that's what we observed together with our professional reviewers. That's where the figure comes out. And regarding the influential factors in the prompts, so I would say we see the largest change when we add positive examples into the prompts. For example, I asked, you should create like more diversified push notification in different content directions. For example, in question format, or in search tone, and then I will just attach a real example of what like what tone I want, or what should be a push notification with questions, then the output will basically follow this kind of format. So it won't be too random. So you can basically control what you will see in the next. And also for multi-languages, I also collaborated with our professional writers because personally I don't speak all these languages. So I will ask them to write their version of prompt based on my draft. For example, my draft is for English, and then I will send it to my French writer. And she will just add some more tips, more language-specific rules for French. For example, you should use like second singular person, and you should use certain words, and you should avoid several like literal translations in English. And in French, there should be a space between the signal, between the symbol and the text, etc., etc. So these are unknown for English content designers, but these are basic for French writers. So I will just closely collaborate with them to finally have a refined, polished prompt. Yeah.
Thanks. That's super helpful. I have one more question, but I'll loop back to it after in the row if there's time.
Okay, fantastic. We have, I think, very similar questions from Antonio and Pedro regarding how to refine the prompt. Maybe Pedro or Antonio, you can jump in and elaborate a little bit.
Maybe I can talk, Antonio.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna pretty much read what I wrote down because I try to be as concise as possible. So in Brazil, there's been a huge increase in terms of courses on how to write like prompt, about prompt writing and prompt engineering. And unfortunately, the consensus is that there are no best practice so far. What are your thoughts on it? And would that be just a matter of like testing things out with as much detail as possible, which means that like asking questions with as much detail as possible and using a human perspective and maybe, and of course, business goals to optimize the generated content? And last question, which is also Antonio's question, is if you could share some tips on how to refine your prompt, what would they be?
Okay, yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, that's very interesting because yes, prompt engineering was a very, very popular topic. And regarding, yeah, I would say it highly depends on the content type that you are going to generate. So there won't be a consensus or there won't be a common best practice for like a unified prompt, the format or what information you should include. So personally, I would say as large language models are eventually machine or system, let's say, so it digests a structured prompt better than just a whole paragraph. So for all the prompt, I will just break it into structured, like markdown formats, so the large language model can understand it better. And yeah, about how to refine the prompt. I would say personally, it relates to the experiences. For example, I work on the user growth content, so I'm really familiar with all the content type. So I perfectly know what content I want the AI to give me. That's the premise. Then I will just check if we already have some like established guidelines or style guides, then that can be applied into the prompt, that can be included into the prompt. And then after the positive rules that it needs to follow, I will just think about, are there any forbidden words or are there any like taboos that this outpost need to avoid? Then I will include that part into the prompt. And then based on my experience, adding examples is also a good idea. So I will just add some like positive examples, the really good push notifications or emails that I would like it to give me in this format. And as I work in multi languages, so I will also consider adding like examples in different languages. For example, the prompt is in English because the AI understands English better. But the positive examples for Portuguese prompt, I will just use Portuguese examples. And as I mentioned in previous questions, I will just add some really language-specific rules for Portuguese. And then I will just let the AI to run the first round of output. And I will just analyze what error types there are, and what could be the reasons. For example, there are a lot of literal translations, or there are a lot of different terms that it uses. For example, in AliExpress, we don't say products, we say item. If I say that all the output data is using product, then I will just add this tip into the prompt. That's how I just keep iterating and refining the prompt. So it's quite time consuming. Sometimes it takes me a whole afternoon to just move forward just a step, but it's worth it.
All right, I guess we can take one last question, and we have one last question from Jared. Oh my God. Okay.
No. It's okay. It's okay.
No?
Let Ralph
Okay.
ask. It's just
Okay.
pretty simple.
Okay.
I just wanted to see if you guys thought ChatGPT got better with 4.
Let me ask. Hey, Jared.
Okay, go ahead.
No more questions for you, Jared. No,
Hey,
I actually wrote my question already. I've made pretty good experience in actually asking the language model to rephrase my prompts so it understands it better. It's like, asking like a child, like, have you understood what I mean, and can you repeat? And with that, and then through iteration, you pretty much get what you want. That's my experience, at least. I haven't tried it on like large scale, but on the limited ones I do for now. So I was wondering what the experience there is if you actually use the language model itself to restructure in its own language.
Yes, I would. Actually, I use this method like for several times, especially when I'm being lazy and I just put my random ideas, my random request there, and I will just ask the AI to just organize it to generate a prompt that AI thinks AI can digest very well. And I feel like it's actually very useful sometimes. But I would suggest after AI gives you its version of prompt, you still need to adjust it again. So you are going to review its work based on your understanding, and then you will have a finalized prompt. Because sometimes I can tell that our tech team or our operation team, they are just generating their own prompts. And when I see the words are getting weird, they are using really rare and really like written words that I know they won't use it in their daily life. I know they are using this method. They are asking AI to refine its prompt.
Yeah. Okay. That's my experience as well. But sometimes it also misses stuff. It rephrases, and then some stuff that looks better formulated, actually the output is worse. So I guess we still have some time to go until this works properly. And I've had really bad experience with processing any type of tables. It's really it seems like you ask him to process something, and then you give him rules like very distinct, have him define the rules, and then you put in the table, and it does like the first 30, and the remaining like 200 of the table or whatever, like just like is like random all of a sudden again. So I find that very weird. I'm like, okay. And then I ask, like, did you forget? And it's like, oh, sorry, I forgot. Let me try this again. And then it's doing the same error again. It's like, I have these discussions with the AI. And it always says, I'm sorry, but I mean, in the end, it doesn't help really.
One real quick thing. If you tell it to not use line breaks ever, when you start prompting with it, it'll usually fix that.
Well, I actually tell it to
put line breaks. It likes to put line breaks between its sections very often now, but that's what's causing it to break the table or to not give it in a tabular format. So if you're working with tables, always add don't use line breaks anywhere while working on this request.
No, that's not really the problem. I mean, I actually tell it put it into an Excel like copy and paste format, but it just forgets the rules. It would process like 30 lines and then just like forgets the rules by itself. And then you say like, okay, look at line 30, you forgot the rule, and it'd be like, oh yeah, sorry, let me do this again. And it does the first 30 right again, and then it's the same error. Maybe it's just the limited access that we have from Alibaba to our ideal talk here. Maybe we're not using the full model. Maybe that's one of the reasons. I don't know what the experience is there in AliExpress if you have access to probably the complete model. Maybe we're still having like a filtered access in input and output. I have to I have to verify that at some point with somebody.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your experience. Actually, in AliExpress, we are also using the Ideal Lab. But yeah, we are content designers, we are using the Ideal Lab, but the algorithm team, they have the original full-size model. Yeah.
But Ideal Lab just got rid of ChatGPT 4 like a month ago. So now I'm stuck with Gemini, which is, also there's not enough tokens. I feel like if you use like the real ChatGPT, you can ask follow-up questions. In the Ideal Lab, you cannot. It just keeps forgetting. That makes it a little bit. So you have to rephrase your prompting all the time, basically, right? So its iteration is a little.
I remember there's a button you can turn it on, and then it will just remember your prompt, or it has like memory.
That's it. Let me check. Yeah. Maybe that's it. It just stopped at some point, and ChatGPT 4 was gone. So, but I'm not gonna bother the forum with that. I'll ask my tech people for that. So, thank you.
All right. I guess that's all the questions that we had for today. I think Maria's time is very limited today, so let's wrap it up here. And if you have any more follow-up questions, you can also find Maria in our WeChat group, right? Yes.
Yeah, sure.